Most of you are probably used to seeing me with my co-host, Chris, but Chris is busy walking his dog. Chris got a new dog. The dog's name is Vox, and Chris is taking Vox for a walk. So in the meantime, I'm going to take us on a walk through the evidence in the JonBenet Ramsey case. For those who don't know who JonBenet was a 6-year-old beauty queen. Yes, I know that sounds weird. At the time, it was. This was back before toddlers and tiaras, and most people didn't know that any 6-year-old would be in a beauty pageant. But JonBenet was a winner of many pageants, and she was found deceased on the basement floor of her parents' home in 1996. And the circumstances surrounding her body being found were that her father was asked by the only detective who was present at the scene to search the house. She asked him to search the house from top to bottom, but John Ramsey went straight to the basement, made a beeline to the basement, and carried his daughter's body up from the basement. He carried her up and away from himself like a mannequin and laid her down on the floor. And the detective who was present at the time said that she saw him, it, that he had no tears, but that he was making crying noises. And an autopsy revealed that the little girl had an 8.5-inch skull fracture that was not visible until her scalp had been peeled back. So, for people who believe, and a lot of people think, that the little boy, Burke Ramsey, was the one who delivered the head blow, and that the parents then, supposedly knowing that JonBenet could not be saved, staged the crime scene. That seems rather impossible unless they actually witnessed him clocking her, which I doubt he'd do in front of his parents. And the child was, it appeared, had been sexually assaulted that night and also on previous occasions. Now, there's a popular member of the JonBenet community who has accused me of making things up and of making claims that can't be sourced, and this is false. In a previous video I did, I pointed out that JonBenet's toilet had not been flushed, and that particular commenter claimed that actually what I was referring to was the basement toilet. And while it's true that the basement toilet hadn't been flushed, neither had JonBenet's toilet. It's obvious. The police transcripts can be found online, and Patsy Ramsey is clearly and very obviously being asked questions about JonBenet's bathroom, including her bathroom toilet. And there's also a pair of pants, inside out, girls' pants, on JonBenet's bathroom floor that have fecal stains in them. And in addition to that, there was a package of diapers that had been pulled partway off the shelf in her bedroom, as if someone had started to take them out, but then got distracted. And according to a source from within the crime scene investigators, one of them told a journalist that there was a sheet that was urine stained that was collected and is still in evidence in a Ziploc baggie. And what was believed by the lead detective on the case was that JonBenet wet the bed that night, and that then Patsy replaced the sheets before the police got there. And JonBenet's clothing was found in a heap right inside her bedroom door. This was the pants, boots, and vest she had worn to the party she'd been to earlier that evening. And I made the point that it looked like a child had done that because the clothes were just sort of plopped onto the floor in a heap. And a particular commenter made the point that the Ramseys were not neat freaks, and that it is entirely possible that, as Patsy claimed, she could have undressed JonBenet for bed. But Patsy claimed that JonBenet was carried to bed asleep, and that the clothing was removed while JonBenet was sleeping, in which case an adult would just have tossed the clothing, even if they weren't neat freaks, onto the twin bed. JonBenet had twin beds. And I'll get back later to the fact that JonBenet had twin beds. Also, the stuff about the Ramseys being slobs is somewhat overblown. If you look at crime scene pictures or the video walkthrough of their house, it's not really that bad. They're obviously not type A OCD neat freaks, but they're hardly the hoarders people have kind of made them out to be. And back to JonBenet having twin beds, there was evidence that JonBenet was repeatedly sexually abused. And this was confirmed by a panel of child abuse experts, including one who was one of the lead experts in the country. And this information can be found online if anyone wants to just Google the autopsy summary. Anyhow, there's a particular member of the JonBenet community who claims I'm making this all up. Now, back to JonBenet having twin beds. JonBenet would often get up in the middle of the night to go across the hall to her brother's bedroom to sleep in his twin bed. And this really doesn't fit with what a lot of people seem to believe about the crime, which is that it was committed by Burke Ramsey, and that Burke Ramsey, who was only 9 years old at the time JonBenet died, was the one who was repeatedly sexually abusing this little girl. It's highly unlikely that she's going to seek out refuge in his bedroom in the middle of the night if this is what he's doing to her. Much more likely she's hiding from somebody who has a lot more power and influence, and probably the same person who put her a floor below her parents and on the opposite side of the bedroom from Burke, which is an extremely odd location for putting a 6-year-old, but it works perfectly if somebody wants to conceal a certain activity. And whose fibers link him is John Ramsey. Now, again, a particular member of the JonBenet community claimed I made that all up. No, you can find the transcripts of the police reports and interviews online. This is not that hard. Google a website called acandyrose.com. Bruce Levin, who was the district attorney, stated that John Ramsey's sweater fibers link him to the sexual assault on his daughter. And the prosecutor is not allowed to make stuff up. The police can, the district attorney can't. And I don't think he'd pick that to make up. And John didn't deny it. He just had a overblown hissy fit, which is how he and his lawyer, Lynn Wood, react to any accusation against John Ramsey. Now, John Ramsey has sued many people, people who have made accusations against Burke, people who have made accusations against Patsy. But there's one can of worms he does not want to open: the accusations that are made against himself. He has not sued Cyril Wecht or Linda Arndt or Wendy Murphy, who have all publicly stated that they believe John Ramsey is guilty of child sexual abuse and murder of his daughter, JonBenet. He has not responded to those comments. And there's a reason for it. He doesn't want to go there. Now, a lot of people are blaming the little boy, Burke Ramsey. I don't believe there's any evidence whatsoever, and even the slightest, to lead in the direction of Burke having done this. There's a videotape of him being interviewed by a detective where he's shown a picture of a bowl of pineapple, and Burke hesitates, giggles, and the whole thing is played with creepy background noises on a supposed documentary, a series that was intended to drum up ratings and entertain people. Actually, it's in the account of the lead detective on the case that Burke did recognize the bowl. That part was obviously edited out. And he does, at the end of the clip, say he thinks it looks like fruit. So, for what it's worth, I think it was just he didn't know what that was. And the picture that they flash on the screen in the CBS series is a color photograph, but it's actually not the photograph, not the clear color picture Burke was shown. If you look at the actual video, it's a grainy black and white picture. The bowl does have his prints on it, but it also has Patsy Ramsey's prints on it. And I don't think Burke had anything to do with what happened to JonBenet that night. There was an incident 2 years prior to the homicide where he whacked her with a golf club. The lead detective believed it was an accident, and the clip was to her cheek, which fits with her having walked into his backswing. There was also a videotaped interview of him talking to a child psychologist whose name was Suzanne Bernard, where he drew a picture of his family but did not include JonBenet in the picture. And the child psychologist did note that this was unusual, but she didn't pass judgment. And she made the note that the figures of the parents were drawn further away, and up in the sky. Actually, I said parents, actually the father. And Burke is beside his mother. He and his mother are drawn little in the picture. And at first, Burke didn't even draw himself. He had to be prompted by the child psychologist. So you can interpret this any way you want. If you want to play shrink, you could take the position that he left JonBenet out of the picture to protect him from the father who is in the picture, from both parents who are in the picture, or that he drew the father up and far away from himself because he didn't want to be associated with him. He's trying to distance himself from somebody who he knows did something. Anyway, uh, Patsy Ramsey's fibers are inside the ligature knot, the knot of the ligature that was wrapped around her daughter's neck. Patsy was wearing the same outfit she wore the night before to the party that they went to at the White's house when she opened the door for police that morning, and she was also wearing makeup. Her side of the bed was still made. And it's, I think, rather clear that this was a fatal child abuse case, that it was not unlike many cases every year where children are abused and killed by their parents. And I think the most likely scenario is this child was a victim of repeated sexual abuse and that she was killed in an attempt to silence her. This is what the detective, who was the only member of law enforcement present at the time the body was recovered from the basement, believed, and the Boulder Department of Social Services agreed with her. The lead child abuse investigator on the case, whose name was Holly Smith, was yanked off of the case before she had a chance to finish the investigation, and she made the point that money played a prominent role in the investigation and the cover-up of what actually happened. There are a lot of people who are trying to conceal the truth about what happened here. This is not some sort of grand conspiracy theory. It's pretty straightforward, and the information is out there for anybody who wants to dig it up. And I just wanted to say thank you for everybody who sat through this monologue of mine. And I want to say hi to Chris and Wendy, Brandy, Christine, and anybody else out there who has been paying any attention to any of this. It, thanks a lot.